All right, so finally, we're getting started. Sorry, guys, this is way later than we hoped, but here we are. So we have lots to get through, so I hope you guys have some time. So this is just a little bit of the housekeeping stuff. So over on Facebook, I hope there's people able to join over there. Please just put your comments, ask questions, etc., right in the comment section under the video. If you're in Zoom, use the chat so that we can see what you have to say and that sort of thing. I'm just going to pop my chat window out. This is awesome. Okay. And so this is interactive and live, so don't be afraid to comment, ask questions. I just really want to make sure that everyone is understanding as we go along, because we've got a lot to cover. And some of this stuff is, a little bit different than what you might be used to. Try to make sure you remain muted as we go, just because we don't have everybody muted. So you'll have to be responsible for making sure you're muted on your over on Zoom. Okay, so for day one of the live series, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the idea of going from basically barely surviving to thriving. And we're going to take a look at what survival mode really looks like, because we hear a lot about survival mode and kind of that idea around, a tiger's chasing you. But of course, in this day and age, that is not what our survival mode looks like. So we're going to talk about that. And we're really going to talk about as well what that also looks like in your relationship and how it's affecting your relationship. And then we're going to get into why what you have been doing isn't working and what you can do instead. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. There we go. This person needs muting. So that's what we're going to go through today. So first, I just wanted, for those of you, I know there's lots of people on here who are very familiar with me, lots of familiar faces, but there's also lots of people who I've never met or who maybe just joined the group because of the three-part series. So I'm just going to go a little bit over what my story looked like and how my approach was developed, okay? So, and Nicole, just get you to keep watching that Zoom waiting room, because there's lots of people.
Yes, and let's hop in. I think our last admin housekeeping task is I think I was removed as co-host. And so that's why I'm not being able to mute people nor admit people. Maybe when you came back in. So I'm not perfect.
There, that worked now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, a little bit about me. So one thing that I think is
we can't hear her.
Yeah, because you muted me. Through a lot of just theory, right? So, and I think that that's an important thing to know, because I think that for a large part, that's why what I teach has been so popular. And it's also why what I teach works a lot better for a lot of women. So I do have a lot of education. I've got 2 master's degrees. I've got, a coaching certification from Marianne Williamson. I'm working on a doctorate degree right now. But I can tell you with total certainty that what I've learned most in terms of what I share was by living through a lot of the very same problems or versions of the problems and the stress and the emotions that many of you might be experiencing right now. So when I'm talking to clients in my groups or one-on-one, I very much understand where you're at. And certainly there's never judgment around being there. And so I think that that's an important thing to note, because as we're going through a lot of this stuff, sometimes we can look at survival mode or the things that we're doing wrong, and it can feel like there's some shame wrapped up in that, or that we should be judging ourselves. But I'm telling you, that won't serve you at all. And certainly in this space, it's the best place to be in terms of knowing that a lot of the women who are on this call and a lot of the women who are reaching out for this kind of help are going through the same things. And there's absolutely no shame in any of it. And in fact, if you really adopt some of the stuff that we're going to go over today, you will learn that not only is there no shame in it, but you can be very proud of yourself as you work through it and use it to really help sort of as a jumping off point to that new place in your life. So when I look back, so there's a version of me from 10 years ago. I was really kind of in the early stages of my personal transformation journey at a spiritual level. So I was newly divorced. I was a single mom. I had two, beautiful little girls. And I remember at that time being able to look at my life and I felt pretty blessed for the most part. So I was always pretty good at seeing the upside of things. So again, I had two little girls. I had a very good career. I thought I was healthy. It turns out that I wasn't. More on that later. And I had a great education. So to me, it felt like I had made a lot of very good choices in my life. So it really, really bummed me out that no matter how hard I tried, things weren't getting easier. So at that point, as I said, I was divorced, but I was seeing someone. So I was in another relationship. He had a lot of anger issues. I was feeling like I was constantly walking on eggshells with him. I was trying all the time not to make him mad, which of course, anyone who walks on eggshells knows or should recognize after today that it does not work. It does not make anything better. Of course, at the time, I didn't recognize that. But what I realized during that time was that no matter how great a lot of my choices in life were, no matter how great, I was doing financially or with my career or with my workout schedule, all of it was very much clouded by the fact that I had these terrible relationship patterns that had shockingly followed me from my marriage into a new relationship. And it was really, really a tough pill to swallow at that point. And I don't know how many of you are in this boat, but I hope none of you, but I'm guessing quite a few of you. It's a tough pill to swallow when you recognize that the common denominator is you in your life. And once I swallowed that pill, and once I was able to use that as a way to empower myself to make the changes that I needed to make, because that's really the first step, right? Is realizing, wow, these problems that are mine, and even though it might feel like the world around you is causing them, when you really step into the knowing that you are in some way creating your own life, you can either feel victimized by that or you can feel empowered by it. And I chose, of course, to feel empowered by it. And, there was a time where I would be scrolling social media or talking to friends or even talking to friends about their past experiences. And I started to feel resentful sometimes because I would see people who had these loving, supportive partners. I remember in particular when my youngest daughter was born, my ex-husband, he was my husband at the time, I had a C-section, and my mom had been at my house to watch my older daughter while I was having my C-section and having my second daughter. But she had a really bad cold. So she had left so that she wasn't around the new baby with the bad cold. So my husband brought me home from the hospital and dropped me off. And just dropped me off. And I remember saying to him, don't you want to stay, like, even for the afternoon? And he was like, no, I got stuff to do. So those types of things, looking back and then talking to other people who it's like, oh yeah, my husband took a month off work, or, or we, oh, this great vacation, best vacation of our life, or whatever. What I realized is that those big moments in my life and the vacations in my life and all of that kind of stuff was really clouded by always by some hurt, by some issue that showed up. So it was like I was slowly moving through life, creating this kind of sad bank of memories, instead of creating all the happy memories that I had kind of expected to create, or that I at least felt like I should be creating. And so, I mean, comparison is the thief of joy for sure. But it was also illuminating to me to see that no matter how great I could make my life, and of course, to everyone else from the outside, it looked great. It's like, oh, well, she's got a great husband, they have a great house, she has a great career, all these things. But they didn't know that, yeah, but when my baby was born, I sat by myself when I didn't have any of that support that other people had. And so, when I then entered a new relationships and realized there was another version of it happening, only worse, because the next guy, he didn't maybe start cheating right away, but he was just really grumpy and mad and always wanting to fight. Um, I got to the point with him that I was actually starting to write stuff down and even recording our conversations. Who here will admit to recording conversations? Because I know there's people are putting their hands up. I know that this is something that a trap that a lot of us fall into. And if you're like me, I wasn't doing it so that I could hold it against him. I was doing it because I was trying to figure out where I was going wrong, how I was triggering him, how I could stop triggering him. So basically, what I was doing is I was trying to teach myself how to walk on eggshells better. Right? So I was reading all the personal development books. I was reading about how to make things better, say this and act this way and do this. But, express your feelings, be supportive, use I statements, all of that stuff, right? But of course, learning what to do, it didn't really help, because as soon as there was another trigger, everything went back to the old way, right? So what I want to share with you, and it all just comes from what I learned from, again, 10 years of diving deep into personal development, is when I figured out what finally did work and what helped me to go from, crying. I mean, it feels like at one point in my life, I was crying almost every day. Definitely just being stressed out constantly, dealing with this regular conflict in my relationship. And I went from that to becoming a very happy, confident, very much at peace version of myself, really excited about my future, thriving at a level that, that at 10 years ago, I don't even think I ever even envisioned things going this well, right? And so to go from being a person who was so stressed out every day to being the same person, but just a different version who barely recognizes the old me, and knowing now that everything I was trying wasn't working, and it wasn't working for a reason. And so that's the kind of stuff that I want to share with you, because these are the things that I wished someone had laid out clearly for me 10 years ago. And I'm about to lay it out for you. And so before I move on, though, just so you know, I want to make it clear that there's no part of me that still in any way kind of resents or blames or, has anger towards an ex. So it's important. And I say that because it's important that we all recognize that we're in it together with our partner. So I was just as much a part of co-creating that, even though I couldn't see it at the time. I now see how I was just as much a part of it. And I was creating that reality for myself as much as he was creating that same reality for himself. So I'm going to share with you basically the roadmap for how you can do that. So who is ready for that? Or do we have any big questions, Nicole, that we should pay attention to at this point?
Yes, we do have just a question around clarity. Someone asks, did you say that focusing on what to do didn't work? Like, I think it was when you were talking about all the things you were trying to do. Or
Yes, that's exactly what I said. So yeah, so it's the idea that when you focus on sort of how to act, do this, do that. That's the focus that we're going to remove. And I'm going to really get into explaining that so it becomes much clearer here in a few minutes. Okay, so I hope that helps. So drop a 1 in the chat or in the comment section if you're ready to kind of be open to some new ideas, and if you're ready to really open your mind up for seeing an entirely new perspective on yourself and on your relationship. Okay, because that's really the first step. That's what we need to do, and that's all I'm asking from you over the next sort of hour or so, is to do that. So first things first, just a little backstory on me. So I got married to my high school sweetheart when I was 24. We had 2 little girls, great careers. About 10 years in, and this for anyone who hasn't read my book, it's all in the book, but about 10 years in, I discovered he'd been cheating on me consistently since before our wedding. So that sucked. And of course, I was devastated, so devastated, in fact, that I stayed another 5 years trying to figure out how to make things work, or so I thought that that's what I was doing. And so enter the number one emotion so we're going to talk about the 3 most common emotions that women who are struggling in their marriage feel. And number 1 is this, and that is they feel stuck. Okay, so who is at this point or has at any point felt really stuck? Yeah, lots of ones in there. And so what this is about is feeling like all the options suck, right? And I think that's actually one of the chapters in my book, is when all the options suck. And of course, what that means is that the idea at the time of leaving my husband, that felt like a really awful idea. You know, when all of this started going down, I had a very small baby and a 6-year-old. So the idea of leaving him wasn't just simple, right? This wasn't me breaking up with my boyfriend. We had properties and children together. And it was awful. And the idea of a divorce went against kind of everything that I believed. So I had been raised very Catholic. There wasn't a lot of divorce surrounding me as a child or anything. This wasn't something that I had kind of expected. And to be honest, I really believed in marriage. Okay. And I still actually really, really believe in marriage. And that's why I made the choice to get married again, because I believed in the importance of marriage. I believed definitely in the importance of family. And I loved my husband as well. Like, at the end of the day, I was very hurt by him, but I still very much loved him. I saw a lot of potential in him, right? Oh, the potential. And I felt like we should be able to work things out. So the idea of leaving felt awful, but the idea of staying also felt awful, because the longer things went on and the harder it felt to change anything, it felt like staying meant I was going to basically spend the rest of my life feeling stressed out, unappreciated, unloved, lonely. So that didn't really feel like a great option either. So this is what stuck is, right? It's both options suck. And of course, it's a terrible place to try to make a decision from. Okay, the second one, and many of you might feel this, is overwhelm. And so when you're in that kind of survival mode, or when you are in a relationship that's struggling, often it can feel like the demands of life, the demands of the relationship, are starting to exceed your ability to actually cope effectively at times. And this is a really interesting one, because overwhelm manifests differently depending on the wound that's driving the overwhelm. And we're going to get a little bit more into that. But for me, at the time, overwhelm, and even now when I'm overwhelm manifests as really hypervigilance. So when I'm overwhelmed, I just get more focused, right? So nothing can go for me, especially at that point. so I was, I was hyper vigilant about keeping my house clean. I made sure that my kids were in activities and, they were always obviously well taken care of, which obviously is not the thing to go. I was, because I'd been cheated on, I had developed these really, quite serious body dysmorphia issues. So then I was up usually 4:30 or 5 every morning to go to the gym and work out. I was really obsessive about that. So everything that I did was done at this sort of hyper vigilant, ultra focused level because I was trying to manage my overwhelm. Okay. Now, I remember at the time people would be talking about TV shows they're watching, and I'd be thinking, who the heck is time to watch a TV show? Right? Because I would be up at 4:30 or 5 and I didn't go to bed until very late because the only thing that did go for me at that time was sleep. It was like everything else was more important than, certainly more important than me, and definitely more important than sleep. So you can imagine how well that worked for me. But for some people, hypervig or overwhelm manifests the opposite way, which actually makes them feel really unmotivated. So they feel, and maybe this is you, when you're feeling overwhelmed, that's when you want to grab a bottle of wine and sit on the couch. So it's like a way to avoid everything that's overwhelming you, or maybe you procrastinate a lot when you're overwhelmed. So their behaviors manifest differently about that, but usually it's the same thing driving that. So maybe put in the chat for you, if you ever feel overwhelmed, are you the type A hypervigilant, or are you the type B procrastinating freeze? Yeah. 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 So you can see even in here, like there's just a ton of differences between what that looks like. But it's important to know that, because when you realize, oh, I'm overwhelmed, right? Then you can actually at least become aware of where things are going so that you can start addressing it from the right place. Okay. All right. Now, the third one, that is a really common emotion, for people who are kind of struggling to figure out their marriage, is defeat. Okay. And this is important because it's a different type of defeat. Because, in a game, say we're playing a hockey game or a tennis match, defeat means, okay, I've lost. And so that's sort of the driving energy behind defeat in a relationship. Excuse me, but this is the worst type of defeat, because this is defeat without quitting, because you're too stuck to quit, right? But it's also defeat without really trying. So it very much is in with that stuck and overwhelmed, right? So it's a sense that things are not where I want them to be, but I have no idea about how to change things. And so at this point, then, when you're feeling defeated, things just kind of seem completely out of your control. It feels like you're kind of powerless to do anything. And I really can identify this feeling in a lot of women when they come to me and they say things like, well, I can't change him, so what am I supposed to do about it? Right? So it's that sense of, it's kind of that sense of I give up, but without actually giving up, because you're still there. So here we have it. These are the three most common emotions of women struggling in marriage. And so now, what does this all lead to? Survival mode. Okay. So now you're living in survival mode. So you're stuck, you're overwhelmed, you're defeated. So this is you, this is life, right? And it kind of feels essentially like it's you against the world, and nobody has your back. And that feeling of nobody has your back, it doesn't matter how much maybe family support you have. I certainly, my mom was amazing, still is amazing. But my mom was amazing for helping with my kids when I needed her, all that kind of stuff. Like I always had an amazing amount of family support. I still always felt like nobody had my back. And the reason for that is because these problems are owned by us. So no matter how much support is around us, it's ours to own, and nobody can fix it for us. And again, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. So it can make you feel awful and nobody can fix it for you. Or you can look at that as making you feel very empowered, knowing that you are the one who gets to fix it. You have the power to fix these things for yourself. So survival mode, I remember feeling like, and I know this analogy has resonated with a lot of women, it's this feeling of like there's this vase that's all cracked, right? And I remember feeling like I'm just carrying this vase around through my life and it's completely cracked and shattered. And I'm always trying to hold it together. And from the outside, people are thinking, oh, it looks like a really nice vase. But for me, it was just this constant feeling of if I let go of the vase, everything's going to fall apart. So I'm completely stuck. I'm overwhelmed because I can feel the pieces slipping away from me, right? And I kind of give up on the idea that there's anything better for me out there because there's nothing I can do about it. Okay. So how is this resonating with you guys? Who here might think they might be in survival mode right now? Yeah, lots of yeses. Okay. Okay, so now from here, you're in survival mode. And what do? Let's work on our relationship. Okay? This is a terrible idea, you guys. This is the first thing that most of us do wrong, right? So I have yet to see someone who has created this really fantastic relationship or a really fantastic life for themselves that is operating in that energetic state, that nobody in survival mode, in that, really stressed out, overwhelmed, stuck energy for any period of time, that is not where you create goodness from, right? Because it's a defense. You're just trying to defend yourself from the bad stuff, but it's not a place where you create the good stuff. So we have to, instead, you have to look at what survival mode does create, right? So survival mode creates dysregulated emotions. So this makes you confront issues in a way that maybe isn't healthy. Maybe you're being more aggressive, or you are attacked, and instead of realizing it's a them thing, you feel really defensive. Or maybe you're the attacker, maybe you're critical of others. You might avoid conversations because you're dysregulated and you're just wanting to give up. It obviously increases your stress hormones. So there's a very physical response to survival mode. So you've got this elevated cortisol constantly. You've got this increased adrenaline. So of course, as if we don't have enough problems as women with, postpartum hormones and then perimenopause stuff and then menopause stuff. Now you add in survival mode and you're just going to be a hot mess, right? That's just the bottom line. So the elevated stress and the physical impact of that should not be, I am certainly no doctor and no expert on that, but it definitely is something to pay attention to, and it should not be underestimated. The other thing this does when you're in survival mode is it gives you a very narrowed focus. So when you are in that mode, it's like you're looking at like this, right? You've got these blinders on, and these blinders are what you feel protects you from all the stuff. But what's really happening is the blinders are actually blocking out all of the new ideas, new opportunities, new perspectives that might actually help you, because you can't see those things when you're in survival mode, right? And then of course, the last one is emotional exhaustion. So one of the things that I hear so often, probably almost every day from a woman, is I'm just tired, right? Because it gets to a point where you're tired of being stressed out, you're tired of feeling sad, you're tired of feeling resentful. It is an exhausting place to be for any extended period of time. It's an exhausting place to be for a day. It's a crippling place to be for a decade. Okay? And you may or may not be surprised at the number of people who I work with, number of women who I work with, who are literally there for a decade, right? And then what we wonder where all of our physical ailments come from. So as I mentioned, I thought I was healthy back then, and then later realized I had a tumor on my thyroid, which through a series of beautiful synchronicities was caught and found, and so it's totally fine. But it was caught and found because I was leaving survival mode and taking care of myself. Had I not been, I would have been blind to the new ideas and perspectives that actually took me down the path of having that discovered. And that is just an example of those synchronicities, how they show the universe is trying to guide you in the right direction. But when you're in survival mode, it's very hard to see that because you've got those survival mode blinders on, right? So now let's compare this to the thriving mode. So when you're thriving, it looks very different. When you're thriving, you're emotionally balanced. There's a lot of stability in your life. You know, you're able to handle stress quite well, and at least you make it your purpose to handle stress, or you make it your priority to handle stress. You can maintain a really positive outlook. There's happiness, contentment, peace. All of those things are your priorities when you're thriving. There's physical well-being. So there's a different level of motivation to take care of yourself, to exercise. You feel a lot more energetic. That word vibrant, right, comes to mind. Like you're vibrant, you're strong, you want to enjoy life, and you feel like you've got the energy to do so. You have a mental clarity that's very different. So what that does is it allows those new ideas, opportunities, solutions to show up when they are needed. And there's a sense that they're always showing up for you. So thriving mode feels like, oh, it'll all work out, right? The universe has my back. I'm good. Don't worry about it, right? Something bad happens. It's like, oh, that's okay. This is going to happen. And it's not about, you know, toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. It's about allowing yourself to feel your feelings, knowing where they're coming from, giving yourself the time and honoring yourself enough to heal them, and knowing that they're there to help show you what needs healing so that you move on to continue thriving. Okay? So, but instead, you're living in survival mode. So communication is strained, emotional connection is difficult, decision-making is impaired, and you're trying to work on your relationship. And I mean, I have here, you probably shouldn't even be driving, let alone working on your relationship, okay? Which is obviously a joke, but very true that you are relationship impaired when you are in that place. So if you can't communicate effectively, you have a hard time feeling emotionally safe with your partner, you're not in a good place to make decisions. Do you see why perhaps some of what you've been trying in your marriage or in your relationships haven't been working great? Do you see how your patterns maybe have gotten worse instead of better? And actually, I should mention here, make sure you stay to the end of the call because I have a personal self-assessment link I'm going to give you. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of give you a score of where you're at on that survival mode versus thriving mode spectrum, okay? So I'll put the link to it in the chat. I'm not going to do it now because some of you keeners will just start ignoring my presentation and start doing the assessment. I see you all, you keeners. So anyways, but this is really interesting because you'll be surprised by the results of that assessment. I know I was, because when I started learning the stuff I'm about to teach you and started kind of shifting my energy out of that survival state into sort of a confident, happy, secure, thriving state, it was like stepping into a new identity. And from that place, a lot of these things work very differently because life is supposed to be much easier than all of that. So before I move on, another quick check-in. Is this making sense to you? So when you see this, when you see people having a movie date night, trying to go to a marriage counselor, all the books, trying to have the big relationship discussion, does it make sense to you now why some of this might not be working for you? Drop a yes or a 1. Yeah, good, awesome. Okay. So now we're going to talk about more details around why what you're doing isn't working. So before we start, or as we're going here, I want you to understand that everything that I teach comes with a bit of a spiritual bent. However, this is not woo-woo stuff. This is science, right? So science has just been proving what spirituality has always known. And so science is essentially catching up with spirituality. Okay. So whether you're a spiritual person or not, you can feel confident that, this isn't, as I said, some woo-woo stuff that has never been proven. So this is just one of thousands of research projects done. So this was done by the HeartMath Institute. They conducted research on the connection between the heart and the brain, and basically proving that emotions are energy, right? So their studies showed that the heart generates a really powerful electromagnetic field that can be measured, I think, up to about 60 feet away from the body, right? So the other part of this is that emotions like love, gratitude, happiness, those create these coherent heart rhythms and an energy that measures on a positive. So by positive, I don't mean good, I mean above zero, right? So when we talk about positive and negative emotions, that's a really important distinction. Feeling sad is a negative emotion. That doesn't mean it's a bad emotion. Okay, so number one big myth that floats around where people are into law of attraction and manifesting and all of that stuff, delete that from your mind. Okay, feeling sad is not a bad emotion, but it is a negative emotion because energetically it measures below zero on a scale when scientists measure the energy coming off you if you're sad. And of course, there's lots of proof that these positive levels of energy, above zero levels of energy, promote well-being, greater vibrancy in life, all of that kind of stuff. And negative emotions like anger, frustration, that create these incoherent heart rhythms, that leads to stress, of course, and it leads to health issues. Okay. So what this proves, and what thousands of other research projects have proven, is that emotions are an energetic phenomenon that influence our physiological state. And of course, it doesn't take science to tell us that emotions, that energy, also impacts how we behave, how we show up in life, right? So everybody knows that, but this proves it scientifically, right? So this is what I refer to as a thought memory loop. So it's really based on a concept that was developed and made very popular as early as the 1960s by a man named Maxwell Maltz. And so the concept itself is called psychocybernetics, but there's a million other versions of it now because it's just fundamental to understanding how all of this works, how the mind works, but also how energy works. So basically what this does, though, and why it's so important, is because it explains essentially how you create your own life, either on accident, so living by default, or on purpose, which is when you live with intention. Okay, so as we go through this, so it starts with your beliefs. So of course, these are your internal ideas, your programming that's embedded in you from childhood, past friendships, past relationships, what have you. And these beliefs guide how you show up. So your beliefs lead to a thought, your thoughts lead to a feeling, your feelings lead to actions or behaviors, your actions lead to results or consequences. That consequent or that result creates a memory, which then reaffirms the original belief. Okay? So I want you to really pay attention to this, because when you understand this, you can change your entire situation, any given situation, very, very, very quickly. This is the power you have to create your own life, okay? Nicole, I'm not really watching the comments that well, so if there's anything that comes up there, any big questions or anything, just unmute and interrupt me, okay?
Absolutely. And so everyone, if anything Sherry is saying brings up a question, please feel free. I'm grabbing all of them as they come in. So feel free to pop those questions in the chat. We definitely want to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a quick example of what I mean, just to create clarity on here, okay? So as I said, it starts with your beliefs, and that's your internal programming. So, and remember, this internal programming, so when you're thinking of these beliefs, you need to think about, these are often subconscious. Okay, so the way to get to them is actually to look at results. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But so for example, a belief like, I'm not worthy of love. Now, when I look back at my 20, 30 something year old self, I would never have said, oh, I believe I'm not worthy of love. But my results sure indicated that there was a belief in there that needed to be uncovered. So that's a really important piece of this, is sometimes your beliefs are not conscious beliefs. They're right under the surface. So there's that idea of there's repressing emotions, and then there's the suppressed emotions, the ones that you can't get to without doing a lot of the layer kind of work, okay? So say this person has a belief, I'm not worthy of love. That belief then guides their thoughts. So their thoughts might be, I'm not good enough for him. He doesn't really love me. She doesn't really love me. Or maybe even, I can't get anybody else. I can't do it on my own. Any of those sorts of thoughts, right? Those thoughts then lead to feelings. So the feelings might be really insecure, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear about the future, constantly feeling on edge, worried about how their partner might feel or behave, right? So for example, my example of walking on eggshells, that definitely comes from some thoughts, right? The thoughts where I need to control how he responds to me. So I'm going to act differently so he responds differently, right? So my feelings were very insecure rather than strong. It was all coming from a place of fear, very fearful. My feelings lead to action. So the actions might be, always wanting more than your partner gives, constantly seeking reassurance from somebody, enabling bad behavior. So if you're an enabler, that might be a big one for you, definitely was for me. Withdrawing from a relationship, or sometimes the opposite, which is being really passive aggressive or just outwardly aggressive, right? So any of those actions and behaviors that you partake in that aren't healthy, they're coming from somewhere, right? So they're coming from your beliefs, your thoughts, and your feelings. That's where your actions come from. This of course creates a result. So there's a consequence to every action. There's a consequence to every behavior. So you feel insecure, you create an insecure relationship. This then creates a memory, whether that's a memory of, I like this ice cream, or a memory of, see, everybody cheats on me, right? There's small things that happens here. There's big things that happens here. This memory then reaffirms that original belief, okay? So what's interesting here is that beliefs, thoughts, and feelings make up your energy, and that's what you bring to any area of your life. So to put things very simply, negative energy equals negative results. Positive energy equals positive results. So if we were to again look at that energetic scale, and if you're feeling, fearful, sad, anxious, all of those things that keep you in that survival mode, your energy is in a negative place. It's in a below zero place. The results then are going to reflect that. So as you're trying to create change, you want to look closely at what energy you're bringing to the change you're trying to create. So if you're in survival mode, what does that look like for you? Versus what would it look like if you stepped into thriving mode, right? So this is a really important thing to ask yourself when something's not going right. right? Because what we think, what you have been thinking, is that your results are determined by your actions, right? So this is why you try to change your actions. This is why I tried to learn what to say and what to do, how to act, because I thought if I change my actions, I'm going to get a different result. But anyone tell me that that's worked for them ever? Because the only time, I'll tell you, the only time it does work, you didn't actually just change your actions, you changed your beliefs, your thoughts, and your feelings. It might have felt like you changed your actions, but all of this happened first. So as you're working on your relationship, you want to, instead of focusing on what actions and behaviors do I need to show up with, you want to focus on what beliefs am I bringing to the table? What is the energy that I'm bringing? Right? That is then going to automatically drive you to a different result. And the results that happen here, when they're coming from a change in belief systems, are sustainable. You don't, once you heal a belief system, once you uncover a belief system and heal it, you don't go back to it. Okay? If you do, that means it wasn't healed. Or that means you've got another one hiding. And that's okay. The beauty of all of this is life. So, I would love to say, after this 3-part series, you are going to be thriving, right? I would love to say that to you. That is not the case. But what is the case is, if you start putting this stuff into practice, thinking this way, instead of focusing on your actions and behaviors, you can't unlearn that. And you will continue to live your whole life on a trajectory that goes up. Things continue to get better and better and better for you, versus this struggle of trying to figure out a new strategy or a new way to do things that isn't working and never will work. And this is why, for a lot of people who don't work on the energy that they're bringing, life continues to spiral down in a lot of ways. And one thing that I think is really important is, so I'm talking about this from sort of a full life perspective. And I'm doing that on purpose because this stuff applies to everything. And one of the things that, I'm really proud about is, often when women start working with me, they end up making more money. And this was a funny sort of side consequence, unintended consequence, that I started noticing, my first year of coaching. But the reason that I talk about this is because if you look at your money beliefs, you're going to get different results. If you look at your career beliefs, you're going to get different results. And yes, if you look at your beliefs around your relationships and around yourself in a relationship, you're going to get different results. So while my focus in the work when I work with women is on relationships and on finances, this applies to every area of your life. Okay, so how do you know if your beliefs are serving you or they are not? Anyone know the answer to that? Drop it in the chat if you think you know the answer. How do you know if your beliefs are good or if they're not good? If they're serving you or if they're not serving you? Barb says how you feel. By the results, Natasha says, feeling more joy, positive results. Yeah, happiness, contentment. Are you happy? Okay, so some of you have it bang on. Some of you are close. The answer is your results. If you're not getting the results you want, change your beliefs, not your actions. Okay? So let's use a money example. So let's say that you're a person who's having a really hard time making as much money as you really like to make. Okay? So your belief might be, once you started uncovering it, that money is hard to make, right? So it's like, well, my parents always struggled to make money. The only time I ever make money is if I work really, really, really hard. that sort of thing. So the embedded idea there is that earning money requires a really significant struggle. And of course, this could come, as I said, from your parents, from your own personal financial hardship, from things that you watch on Facebook and Instagram, which, by the way, is why it's so important to really curate your feed so that messages that go against some of this stuff are just no longer in your face, because that has a huge impact on things as well. So this person has this programming, money is really hard to make. So because they believe money is hard to make, their thoughts are going to be, I have to work extremely hard. Opportunities to make good money are rare. Maybe I don't have a good enough education to make that kind of money, because they believe that you have to have an education. That's hard. The feelings that they get, that emotional response, might be that they're frustrated, they're stressed out, they feel really hopeless. They're really worried about their financial situation all the time. They feel overwhelmed by that effort to earn money. So then what are their behaviors? The behaviors might be they work really long hours. They seek, more and more ways to make money. But the truth is, in the back of their mind, they're blocking opportunities for really good money, right? Or maybe they avoid new opportunities because they're avoiding the idea of hard work, because it feels like, I don't really want to work that hard. So they just stay kind of broke, and they think it's either work hard or be broke. Right? Anyone here taught that if you don't work really hard, you're going to be broke? Like that's the way to make money, right? I'm telling you, that's a false belief. Look around. There's millions of people who don't work that hard and are really, really rich, right? So something else that might happen is that person might, if they're starting or they're running a business, they may be undercharged for their services, and they sort of attract to them people who complain a lot about paying good, higher prices, right? So they attract people who have some of those similar beliefs, and then this is all reaffirming those ideas for them. They also hang out with people who have similar beliefs, and these are the people who complain about the cost of groceries, complain about the amount of tipping in society right now. How often on Instagram do you see that? And people are like, oh my gosh, tipping's out of control. All of these things, right? This is all coming from people who have a particular set of beliefs around money. So what's the result? They have limited financial growth and they struggle financially. So, and then that affirms for them that money is really hard to make. Okay. So this can apply to every area of your life. It applies to your relationship, how you show up, and it applies to money and all the other areas. Okay. So if any area of your life is not where you want it to be, and if you want to move out of survival mode and into a thriving state, where do we look? We look at our belief systems. Okay. Everyone get that? This is the main message. If your belief system does not change, that area of life will remain largely unchanged as well. Okay, so for example, I left my marriage thinking, whew, won't do that again. And then was in a new relationship that was terrible. Okay, I was the common denominator, or more specifically, my belief system was. My level of self-worth was. My ideas around what I deserved was. That's the common denominator that was creating the same problem. Because I was continuing to live based on default, so it's that default programming that got me to the first place, that default programming in any area of life will continue to get you to the same place, just a different version of the same issues, unless you take a look at those beliefs. So if you live based on your past programming, you continue to recreate the past. And this image here is, so it's money, love, your sense of purpose, and your health. Okay? You live based on past programming, you bring the same energy into your relationship, you're going to keep getting the same problems. So if you want to step into a thriving state, what we need to do is we need to learn the belief systems of people who thrive. So we don't want to learn how to act like people who thrive. We want to learn their beliefs. We want to learn what drives them. So this is why when it comes to your money or relationships, sometimes reading all the books doesn't help that much, because or weight loss is another great example, because you know how to lose weight. You know how to act, right? Lower calories, more exercise, yada, yada, yada. Keto, this, that, whatever it is. There's lots of hows. But somebody doesn't actually lose weight and keep it off until their belief systems have changed, right? And you see that all the time. People who have gone through that journey, at the end of it, they'll say, I'm just a different person now. I have a totally different relationship with food, right? If that had been their issue. Or I have a total, now I really enjoy exercise. I love being active. I really wanted to take care of myself. But there's these shifts in their belief system as they go on that journey that makes those changes sustainable. Okay. That is what we are going to talk about in session number 2 on Tuesday. We're going to talk about what the belief systems of thriving women look like. Women who are thriving in relationships and women who are thriving with money. Okay? Because I want you to stop focusing on what to do and start focusing on what to believe. And when you do that, what happens is you start realizing every time your belief system isn't lining up with what you want it to be. And then you know what to shift. Then you know where to do the work. Okay. I'm going to grab the link for the assessment. I'm going to put it in the comments. There's the link in the chat there. Does everyone see that? And you can copy and paste it into your browser if you want, so that you can do that quiz. So your homework then is to, of course, complete that self-discovery assessment to see where you're at on the surviving versus thriving spectrum. And that'll be important for day 3 or day 2 of our series. I would love for you to take and put at least one key takeaway from the session in the Facebook group under the comment section. Was the live working okay over there, Nicole?
We had some issues and we'll troubleshoot. So
Okay.
yes.
Okay, but is there a place for them to put comments there?
I would say the best place to put comments is going to be in the relationship group, the Relationship Answers for Women Facebook group.
Yes.
And then the video is not going to be the best place to leave comments, but just in the group we can create a post.
Okay. All right. That's what we'll do. Yeah, and we'll get this streaming figured out. Like I said, it was all confirmed that it was going live automatically at 5:30. I think it still says on the post going live, and then it just didn't go live. So, but that's okay. We'll get that figured out. And I appreciate your patience around that. But what we'll do is we'll post this video in the Facebook group for those who are wanting to join over there. And of course, bonus, if you have something nice to say, not if you're going to be mean, but if you have something nice to say, tag me in a post on social media, and and then I'd love to do that, to share it with people. So over on Instagram, that just means the @ tag, but you can also do it over in the Facebook group or just on Facebook, on your Facebook page, if you want to say, enjoyed the session with Sherry or whatever. But definitely the key takeaway would be awesome, because I love to see what people are taking away. All right. Does everyone has access to that link? Okay, so May, you're saying you don't see, do you see it here? I'll just put it in the chat again. And we'll also put it over in the Facebook group. There it is in the chat again. For anyone? Okay.
And
Now,
there's the Facebook group as well. If you're not a member there, make sure to join. And then we do have some questions for anyone who wants to stay later, Sherry. So
Yes, awesome. And we can take these questions and we can I'm going to collect them as well. Someone's asking, will these questions be collected? That's why I asked. And yeah, I will collect them. And I want to know anyways, because it helps me to know what we need to focus on a little bit more, a little bit less of in session number 2. So first of all, I'd like to know, how did everybody enjoy the session? Was this helpful? Did it feel illuminating to you? Any comments around that? Too long? Very helpful. Good. Awesome. Good. Oh, I'm glad it wasn't too long, Erin. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Any questions, Nicole, that are popping up now that we should try to address while we're here?
yes, let's and I have probably about 5 to 10. I can, just let me know how many you want to cover. But we'll start with so in terms of how long you feel like it takes to turn into the new version of you. Natasha says, how much time does it take to change into the new version of you? Or we also had how long to change those beliefs, do you generally say?
That's a tough question to answer because it depends so much on each individual, and it depends on the level of wounding or the level of the belief system. So, as I said, concepts apply to every area of your life. So some people might have, you might know people who have had a really great relationship their whole life, but have just never been able to get their finances under control, right? So they might have maybe little tweaks in their relationship that are really easy for them to look at their belief systems around, whereas their money stuff, they need to do more work around. So for me, for example, around the money stuff, I had, and this is, what happens when you do coaching, is I had these aha moments, right? So sometimes that really speeds stuff up. So one of the things that I remember, I was with a coach, and I'm trying to remember his name now. Darn, because I hate not being able to give people credit. He was awesome. Darn it. Darn. But anyways, he was an awesome coach. And I joined this session around money stuff. And one of the things through the session that I realized is that I had this belief around money that money should flow through men to me. Right? So when I looked back at some of my past money stories or my money history, I had grown up in a traditional family. I grew up on a big farm, and with lots of aunts and uncles and all of that. And my mom worked, and some of my aunts worked, some of them didn't. My mom didn't work sometimes, but it was kind of like all the women's money was like for extra money. It wasn't the main money. Right. So, and I don't know how many of you have had that, experience in your childhood. And I hadn't really thought about it because I thought, well, I was raised that you definitely go to university. Women need to, be able to take care of themselves and all of that stuff. So it never occurred to me that I really deep down had that money belief. But then when I started looking at my own behaviors, how I had left my very good job, which made more money than my husband at the time, to move for his job, right? It was just kind of like I didn't even think about it. It was like, oh yeah, we'll do this and whatever. So I had these old belief patterns that were really guiding a lot of my behavior. So that was number one. But then what I also realized about myself is that I had what was subconscious that came to my conscious fear that if I did make lots of money, that would mean a man would never want to take care of me. And when I started to uncover that, and I remember in this session realizing, oh, that really scares me. Like I really believe that. That's a block for me. I believe that if I make lots of money, it's like admitting to myself, I'm never going to have a man who wants to take care of me. It's like admitting to myself, I'm going to be alone. This is my life. And when I was able to bring that to the surface, it was then really easy to heal, right? So that was a really quick one. It was there for my whole life, but as soon as it came up, when I had this aha, then all my behavior changed. Because then all of a sudden that fear was gone, and then it was just like my career just skyrocketed because I was no longer blocking the idea of being a big wage earner or a big earner in general, right? So that question of how long does it take? It just really depends. How big is the belief? How easy is it going to be to uncover? And of course, how much are you going to commit to doing the work to uncover it? So I see that there's a number of people in here who are my current clients, and I know some of them, like they are having huge ahas lately. And, I'm looking at a few of them. They're having these huge ahas. So things have changed for them in a couple weeks. So it just really depends on the work you do, how you do the work, how committed you are, all that sort of thing. Hope that answers the question. Of course, it's the safe answer. It depends. Okay, Nicole, what's next?
Here's another one that a few people have shared is, what if the negative belief was caused by a negative action? So for example, you feel Paula shares that she didn't feel she had trust issues with him until he cheated, but that's caused her to go into survival mode. And so again, the idea of a negative action causing your negative belief.
Yeah, and I get that, and that was definitely I would say that would have been my experience as well, like that I was shocked. I felt very blindsided. So it's important to recognize that sometimes when negative things happen in life, it layers on a new negative belief. But it's important to know there was a belief already there, you just didn't realize it. So again, when I look back to my marriage, I, would never have said, oh, I don't believe I'm worthy of love. But when I started to do this work and uncover beliefs and where they came from, I realized that I very much felt like that. And it had nothing to do with my husband. It had to do with all sorts of other things that had happened in my childhood and that had happened in my life. And then dating my husband was just a way to keep reaffirming that, and almost a way to punish myself, to make sure that I didn't get more than I deserved. So yeah, so there's always something there when you're experiencing a result, and that's okay. So this isn't a scary thing. It's not like, oh my gosh, I've got these scary negative beliefs. No, this is a great thing, because what it means is that when you have a result, you go, okay, what work do I need to do here? It's just the universe showing you what needs to be healed. It's signs, right? And the signs just keep getting bigger until the work is done to heal them. What does the bond say here? Just FYI for everyone, I have completed buy-in or complete, I don't know if you mean completely bought in, and 5 weeks. I went, meaning working with me for 5 weeks. And I went from being in survival mode all the time to transition and progress. Yes. Even your posture has changed. That's right. That's right. Thanks, LeBon. Yeah. Yeah. Paula says the same. And I appreciate, I appreciate clients putting this in here, not just because it's nice to hear, but because it helps other people who maybe haven't started this work, who haven't done this work, to see that it can work for you too. Because sometimes you watch this kind of stuff, and again, because you're sitting on those false lessons and those false beliefs, you're looking at me thinking somehow I'm different than you. And trust me, I am no different than you in any way, shape, or form. Okay, Nicole. Next
And
question.
then, Charity asks that, so if you've had a mindset shift, but then you still have maybe the results you previously created, and how do you advise people heal from some of those results, even as they're working to reprogram their beliefs?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking, you said it was Charity? Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about sort of this gap in time between, so for me, between realizing, oh, it's okay for me to make a lot of money. No, I did not wake up the next day as a millionaire, unfortunately. Right? So there is a gap in time because action does matter. Right? So again, this is one of the
Have a
big
lighter,
crazy
please.
things out there around manifesting, right? And around creating your life is people think, you know, oh, I'm going to sit here and visualize everything that I want in my life, and you know, the universe is going to bring it to me. Okay, now visualization, yes, that's great. But the reason that visualization works is because it's helping you to step into the new identity of the person who's going to take the action, not because the universe just brings it to you automatically. So yes, even when you have a mindset shift, a change in belief systems, there is going to be a gap in time while your actions then are re-inspired in a new direction, right? So, you know, I'm now extremely happily married. That didn't just happen. I didn't meet Darcy sitting on my couch, right? I had to go out on a date with him first, right? So actions need to happen. Now, does the universe have your back? Is the universe providing all the opportunities for you? Yes. And when you're open to it and open to those inspired actions, that's when those synchronicities occur. That's when you meet a guy in the grocery store. That's when, you know, I mean, unless you're married, then don't do that. But that's when you open the right email at the right time that you wouldn't normally open, or you know, are in the bookstore and a book that you've never thought about kind of screams out at you and you decide to open it and it changes your life, right? So all of that stuff is there. The synchronicities are part of it, but you still have to buy the book, right? There's still the actions that need to be taken. The universe gives you the opportunities, your guidance system, and when, and that's another thing, we'll talk about this more next time, but when you're in that heart energy, that energy that we're talking about, and in the positive, that is a magnet, right? And that is your life force. That's your guidance system helping you to create. It's literally creative energy. So it's helping you to create in the right direction. And so it does change the way you show up and behave, but that's because you're feeling inspired to go towards the future you desire instead of protecting yourself from the present that you don't like, right? Those are two very different ways to approach life. You either make decisions based on where you're going, or you're making decisions based on protecting yourself from where you're at. One's going to take you to where you're going, one's going to keep you stuck where you're at. Does that answer the question? I hope so.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great. And
Okay, we'll take one more.
okay, great. Oh, there's a few good ones in here. I think, well, what do you do when you're separated? So Amy asks, how does your partner see those shifts in you if you're separated or no contact? Or how do you advise people about
That's
that?
a great question. So this is an interesting one, and I've dealt with this a lot with clients, even like lots of clients who come to me and they're already separated, don't live together, and you know, this question comes up of, so I'm changing and I've shifted, and you know, now what do I do? But I will tell you again, energy is real and those synchronicities are real. So as you start to change and shift, there's changes in the world around you as well, and you attract to you different situations, different circumstances, and different people. That might mean that all of a sudden, you know, your ex who you're not living with, you know, and hasn't contacted you, all of a sudden he texts you one day. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again. right? He'll text you all of a sudden, or you have a different desire or inspiration to reach out to him in a much different manner than maybe you would have reached out to him before, right? So it really, again, every situation is different. And in some cases, what happens as you start to change is you realize you don't even want the contact anymore. And you realize, wow, dodge that bullet. I was holding on to something that wasn't for me, and now I don't want to. And so it just really depends on what the situation is and what that new version of you, how she's guided to create a relationship and a life that she loves, not that's going to further stress her out. And, you know, I always say, I'm never here to save your marriage, but I'm also never here to break it up. Okay. So my goal is always to help you step into the version of you that creates the life that you want. So without knowing your partner, you know, I can't coach you on, oh, you know, you should show up this way, or I hope your marriage is safe. Because sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, you should leave him, is how I really feel. But then there's other times with couples or with women who I think, oh gosh, I hope that works out. You seem really great together. You just have to tweak this, right? So it's every situation is just very different. Okay, we will call it quits there. So do the survey or the self-assessment. Put a comment in the Facebook group about your biggest takeaway and who is coming on Tuesday. So it's Tuesday, August 13th. So drop a 1 in the chat box here if you plan to come on Tuesday. I hope to see as many people as possible there. And for those of you who are watching this as replay, also I'd love to see you live on Tuesday. So remember, every time, and Nicole has taken count, every time you come live, you're entered to win a free coaching package with me. So that's always lots of fun. So if you're live, if you come live 3 times, that's 3 entries into the draw to win a free coaching package. And, oh, Susan's already gone and completed the assessment. I knew there'd be those keeners. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much, you guys. You're awesome. You're ready for the next step. Oh, sorry, Barb, did you have a question? Okay, sorry. You're ready for moving forward. You're ready for this. So really, really, really think about this stuff as you're, you know, relaxing, hopefully, and having fun this weekend. And we will see you on Tuesday. Bye, everyone.